Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Depressed Dior, and this is Middara on Tabletop Simulator. So, we got some things to do. We got one girl, two books, because we did succeed in the battle. So, yeah, one girl, two books, which is page 267. That'll be up here. Okay. Zeke dropped to the ground on the other side of the large double doors, breathing heavily. He rested there for several minutes, wondering how much more he could take before he died of exhaustion. Justice casually scrambled past him, as though she hadn't just fought for her life. She stopped in front of the second huge book, then scooped it into her arms. Zeke rose to his feet just in time to see a giant grin plaster across her face. It almost made up for having to battle that atrocity. Almost. I know what you're about to say, Justice said, looking between him and Damocles. We should have waited for the others and come back, but who knows what that giant sheet would have done to the place while we were gone. It could have trashed everything. We can't afford to lose this book. It's everything we are looking for. It's the whole reason the Anointed came to Gehenna in the first place. Once I get a chance to study it. Damocles frowned, waving impatiently in her direction as he walked back toward where Rook should have been waiting for them. Justice looked to Zeke with a sheepish, hopeful smile. That was a hell of a fight, he whispered to her while Damocles' back was turned. Zeke held up his hand and she jumped to give him a high five. We should get back to the others, though, Zeke said. The sooner that we get back to the surface, the happier I'll be. Agreed, Damocles said, his glowstone raised in one hand. We need to regroup. Mark the story flag Book of Gehenna on the adventure sheet. I'm having a little bit of a... I did refresh the cache because I was just checking to see if any of the cards have actually been updated. Gatekeeper, from what I can tell, was not updated. Wasn't updated through the cache, and I even opened a fresh Middara module, and it still was not updated. But I'll continue to try to play with the more recent rules if I can. Obviously, you guys can't exactly see the exact... you won't be able to see the exact card on Tabletop Simulator when I'm recording, of course. Alright. Book of Gehenna has been checked. Does the party have the story flag rested? Yes. And continue to what happened to you guys, page 268. This way. At around what he assumed was morning, Rook heard familiar voices echoing from the stairs. He stirred, blinking away his tiredness. He cursed himself for dozing off. At least Remy had managed to get a good night's sleep. As the voices got closer, he could tell they were arguing. Whatever their disagreement, it was important enough that they weren't bothering to keep their voices down in the ruins that were filled with monsters. That giant tree might have destroyed it while we went for backup. You saw how it was thrashing about. I couldn't take the chance. Jess's voice was close. They were almost up the stairs. They were so loud that Remy was starting to stir. Zeke sounded every bit as angry as Justice. You threw yourself at something you knew was deadly with only Damocles and me to help you. We can always find another book, but if you get yourself killed... It's not my fault, Damocles said, sounding a little less emotional than the other two. I set the monster loose. It was my mistake, not hers. We should have been able to walk away without a fight. As they made it up the stairs, Rook was surprised by how battered they looked. All three of them were covered in slime and had dirt smeared on their faces, and their hair was up at odd angles. Zeke seemed like he was walking with a bit of a limp, though all of them looked rough. Damn. The word was out before Rook could smother it. What happened to you guys? Zeke and Damocles both turned to look at Justice. Zeke was the first to speak. We spent the night trying to get ourselves killed. Not really what I had in mind when we set out, but... Oh, shut up. Justice glared at him. I didn't hear any better ideas out of you. If you had... Excuse me. Rook stood slowly and meaningfully enough that his friends fell silent. Forget the argument. Did we get what we came for or not? Yes, Justice admitted. No sign the Anointed made it that far, though. We found the book we were looking for. A minute of reading and I already know about the Pontifex. Maybe enough to save Nightingale. Excellent. Rook didn't leave enough silence for any of the others to interject with another argument. You can explain it to Nightingale when we get back to the surface. I think we've been keeping her long enough. Rook turned away from them and gently nudged Remy's shoulder. Remy? Oh, I'm awake, she croaked, beating his eyes. They were loud enough that I heard everything. Good. Rook offered her arm. You think you can walk? Yeah, here it is. Remy groaned, but took the offered hand. My leg is still aching. The wing is worse. It throbs with every heartbeat. She giggled at the last comment. She okay? Zeke asked. Remy was beaming with a goofy smile. It's the painkillers, Rook explained. Give her a little more time. You think someone could find me a stick or something to use as a crutch? Remy asked. After Damocles scooped up something suitable, they were on their way. Continue to page 270, crashing. Down this way. Give me one moment. Justice kept glancing behind her to see the others lagging. Of course, it wasn't Remy's fault that she'd been injured, but Justice found herself annoyed at their slow pace anyway. What she really wanted to do was sprint to the surface, find Nightingale, and track down Zephyr. But she couldn't do that without leaving the others behind. Justice stopped as far away as she dared to go and waited for Remy to limp her way forward. After what felt like an hour, they finally reached the landing. It was empty and thick with dust. Simple geometric patterns adorned the walls. Their colors looking faded and washed out in the dim light. Across the corridor was another staircase. Hey, everybody, she shouted. I think we're almost out. Wait up. Zeke was helping Remy and looked irritated. Justice paced back and forth until they got close enough that she felt confident to rush forward into the chamber up ahead. She looked away, distracted by a faint noise from across the room. Just above her, a few fissures appeared in the ceiling, trailing a faint rain of dirt beneath them. A few seconds later, the ceiling came down, crashing down nearby. A huge writhing mass fell into the room, blocking the way to the stairs. The creature, a thing with several mouths and gnashing teeth, filled the space in front of them. It roared at them with all its mouths at once, spraying spittle that smelled like rotten meat. Straddling the top of its heads, a girl adorned in plants looked down at them. Lichworm, Rook shouted. Smart, the girl on top of the worm yelled back. Though it won't do you any good. Y'all seem to have fallen into one of my traps. She smiled behind glittering red eyes and matted dreadlocks that looked to be more dirt than hair. Too bad more of you aren't wounded. It was you? Zeke stood in front of Justice, furious. You almost got us killed. The woman chuckled. That was the point. I ran into that poor girl up above just before coming to check on what my trap caught. She seemed to care a lot about you. If you touch her, I'll kill you, Rook yelled. Why wait to try? The girl cackled and the worm crashed toward them, smashing rocks as it went. Can of Worms, page 272. All right. Before you, a horrific writhing worm sits nearly 2 stories tall. Riding atop its wretched form is a maniacal girl with filthy dreadlocks, red eyes, and a wide, sharp-toothed grin. You don't know if you're strong enough to defeat such a monster, but maybe it will retreat if you put up enough of a fight. On the east side of the chamber, a boulder sits precariously atop a flight of stairs. Maybe this can be used to your advantage. Alright, so win condition. When Alana and Cassithus have a combined total of 300 or more damage tokens, or 5 time tokens are added. So something I've been wondering, so obviously we've been playing this digitally, and so we have like numbers that we can just click, kind of like over here, we just click this to increase the number. In a lot of these games that have like damage, where you keep track of how much damage you've taken, kind of like how Arkham Horror has like the sanity tokens and things like that, and the health tokens, and this has health tokens as well. How many health tokens are actually in the box? I mean, I'm guessing there's probably some that are like 5s and 10s, but I'm really curious to see how they do this, because the health numbers are definitely getting a lot higher. Anyway, lose condition is obviously losing. Special encounter rules: Alana and Cassithus, Lichworm of the Decrepit City. Get small and large hitting cards UM28. So let's go ahead and get that going. Boop, 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 boop. All right. Oh, also I need to load the page, which is probably going to automatically give me what I need anyway. Yeah, it did. Okay, so I actually don't need this at all. But Obviously the standees are kind of hard to see, but you can see, yeah, it's a big standee. It's actually kind of awkward to use because it takes up, it's so wide. But I mean, I understand why they don't have as many figures because it gets exponentially more expensive. So yeah, since we already have these, I'm gonna go ahead and just put them over here. Boop, off you go. All right. So let's go ahead and read about this. Alana, corrupted nymph. She has 400 HP, 14 defense. Her movement is a star. Armor is 0, and she has a combat dice that is 2 red and an empower die. She has a conviction of green and red, and a casting die of green. Every 2 books increases her magic damage by 3, and every burst increases her magic damage by 2. Symbiotic relationship. Lana and Cassithus have hulking, colossal, and immunity condemn. While not burrowed, they also have crush. While not burrowed, the first time each turn Alana can, she will counter, and with a range 6 attack with a follow-up of push X, where X is equal to the damage dealt, and inflicts poison and disease, force 12. So yeah, special nasty counter there. She has Hemlock and Sarah, so her SOI is 6. Gloomy Domain. While Alana is alive, disciplines controlled by opponents that have a no SP cost, no SP condition cost printed on the left side have a condition cost of 1 SP. This does not affect passive abilities printed on these disciplines. So I've done this fight once before, and this thing here is what is going to throw me off so much, because as I play, obviously I know my abilities, just from muscle memory and all that stuff. So I have to constantly check myself throughout this fight to make sure I actually spend the SP when I need to spend SP. So it's gonna get rough. So this means things like Blade Works, False Idol, those things that you use to get free attacks now cost 1 stamina, and even things like this Proof of Divinity now costs 1 stamina. Same thing for Mend. Even just to activate Mend costs stamina. Same thing for From the Grave. So it could get pretty brutal. It's actually really bad for Damocles because all of his stuff is free, which means with the exception of the passives, his Sinful Privilege, Imbued Fear, Blade Distortion, Blade Works, all that's going to cost him stamina. So it's going to be really costly for him. Yeah, so it's going to be rough. She doesn't automatically dodge, which is the good news. Also, he can at least prevent counters from happening, which is also good. A few other things to go over, of course. You need to check to see if she's burrowed, which we'll go into burrowed in a bit. Move purple spaces, so her movement's variable. Moving to be underneath as many opponents as possible, then you continue down, which apparently is twice for some reason. Is Alana burrowed and underneath an opponent? If so, she's going to cast a spell and try to inflict darkness. That will also it hits all figures that are on the burrow token, does purple magic damage, and inflicts darkness. If she's surfaced, she'll cast a spell 6 against all opponents with an SOI and do red magic damage. So she's just a nasty AoE caster that just does a bunch of status effects and magic damage. She also has 14 defense, which is pretty high at this point. Cassithus, Dominated Worm. Worm traits, Alana and Cassithus, same thing as before, have all those benefits. Confusing Pheromones. If an opponent would ever make a move action or use free movement that would move them out of Cassithus' SOI, they must pass a Presence 12 check. If they fail this skill check, their current action and ability immediately ends. So yeah, getting away from this thing is really, really, really annoying. It's actually kind of nasty because if you do something like Bring the Shadows, move through them, and then try to get out of range, and you fail the check, it will actually end your ability before you actually do damage. So that's something to be aware of. It'll make a check to see if it's burrowed. If you're burrowed, it's going to move purple spaces, so it also moves on its own turn. Is Cassithus burrowed and underneath an opponent? It'll move each figure on the burrow token into the nearest unoccupied space, then unburrow. Cassithus makes a separate attack against each opponent within reach 2. These attacks have has a follow-up of push X, where X is equal to damage dealt, and it has in force 12 at force 14. So if you get hit hard, not only are you going to take a bunch of damage, but you're more likely going to take even more damage as you slam against something. Is Cassius not burrowed? Move to be up to reach 2 from as many opponents as possible. He does have a movement of 4. Then make a separate attack against each opponent within reach 2. These attacks have follow-up wilt, force 14. And then continue down after that and essentially do the otherwise, which is burrow. So if you're not burrowed, go ahead and burrow. He heals with every 2 books. He does 3 physical with burst, 1 physical for every shield. He has no casting. His conviction is teal and green. His attack is blue, gray, and it's empowered. He has 13 defense, 4 movement, and 800 health. So their combined total is 1,200 health, by the way. The goal for this is not to kill him. It's just to do 300 amongst them. So, yeah, we got that going for us. We should have Elifie with us. Yeah, we should have Elifie's card somewhere. Elifie, what happened to your card? Ah, that's what happened. Found it. And then somehow that got stacked as well. Okay. Okay, so we got all that. Other special rules. If Rook is injured and the story flag experience guide was not marked, you essentially could potentially get Surrey, it looks like. And then tracking time. At the start of every round, add a time token to the back of the initiative track. At the end of this encounter, keep track of how many time tokens were added. Only read the following hidden text if instructed to for attrition. There's a blue loot. Yeah, they have the loot tokens. There's a blue totem, and then there's a blue objective. This token represents a large boulder. It can be moved through and does not block line of sight. An adjacent adventurer may make an encounter action to push the boulder. If they do, read the following. So the boulder is up there. All right. Okay. So we got that going for us. As for the setup, we start out in the center of tile, whatever that is. Looks like tile... I'm not sure what tile that is. It is UM30. Okay, so we're in the center of tile UM30. This fight is going to be interesting. So both Cassius and Alana are the same figure. Anytime I do anything involving them, I have to decide. I have to declare which one am I targeting. So, for example, if I'm targeting this figure, I have to declare before making the rolls whether or not I'm attacking Alana or Cassius. I did get confirmation about Dynamite. The first time I did this, I assumed it only hit one of them, but I did confirm on Discord by the developers, Dynamite does hit both of them. And technically, you can hit both of them with Bring the Shadows by just simply targeting one with 1 space and then targeting the other with a second move through their space. So that's an option. And that's pretty much it. Okay, so needless to say, this fight's going to be interesting. Now, something to note, Alana doesn't actually move if she's not burrowed. So that's something to take into account. So we can always hope that Alana goes first, just so she can waste her turn. Alright, let's go ahead and play some tokens. Definitely want her in the front. Damocles can try to stay out of trouble. And you're there you go. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're just out of spellcasting range, just barely. So needless to say, this is going to get interesting to say the least. Okay. Also, we need to reset stamina. I don't know why they were all maxed out all of a sudden. And all right, I think that's everything. I'm going to go ahead and call it here. As always, I try to break up the story bits. So, and this fight's going to take a while. So I'm going to go ahead and just call it here. I am The Depressed Eeyore. This was Middara on Tabletop Simulator. I'll see you guys in a bit.